Hi everyone, today we are going to be discussing all the books that I read in January. The total of it being 9 books. Close to 10, but we got 9. And that is not a bad number. So here we go. Now, I do apologise, but I don't actually have any physical books to actively show you in terms of my January wrap up, because almost all the books I read were audio, ebook, and while I did have at least 2 physical books, they were library books, so I unfortunately had to give them back. So again, I don't have physical copies, which is a little bit of a shame, but it is what it is. So we are just gonna go through. We'll give a quick rundown of my general feelings of this book, because I don't want this video to be too long. And yeah, we'll see how this goes. See if it ends up being longer than I hope. We'll see. So, if I just quickly... Yep. So, right off the bat, the first book I do technically have to talk about is Gears of Ragnarok. This is the 3rd and final book of the the Valhalla Mechanism series by Kendra Moreno, somewhat. I think that's how you pronounce the name. Now, I started this in December, and I tried my best. I kid you not, I stayed up late on New Year's Eve, despite the fact I wanted to sleep, reading this book, because I wanted it to be my last book of the year, because I was really enjoying it. But I did not. It literally hit midnight when I got to the the final battle of the book. I was, not to say I was disappointed, I was happy that I read what I read within that time space, but I unfortunately did not get a chance to finish the book. I did give this book 5 out of 5 stars, the same as I have done for the other 2 books in this series, and forgive me, but I do plan on rereading this series because I actually really enjoyed it. But yeah, that was technically my first book of the year. And then, literally, I think it's the next day I did it. Let's check my notes. Yes, literally the next day, on January 2nd, I read my second book, which was Viva Vendetta. This was a library book that I was reading on ebook as well. This one I gave 3 out of 5 stars. Obviously I read it in a day because it's a graphic novel, but I'm going to be honest, this book was a tiny bit confusing at times. Because I didn't know fully where the storyline was going, but because of what was happening within the storyline, I kind of was hooked either way. So I just read it. I didn't really understand it all in the end. The only part I got for all of it was that there was this figure who wears a Guy Fawkes mask, and on the 5th of November he sets off fireworks, which apparently is not, or something, it is something that's not really allowed in this variation of London. But it was an interesting story. I don't get me wrong, the fact it was set in London was great, so I really enjoyed that. It is disturbing at times, so please be mindful. And then we move on. We skip a couple of days on to the 5th of January, because that is when Winterween started. And between the 5th and the 11th of January, I read 2 books. I wanted to read more, but I only read 2. The first one I read was Witch Dust. This was a book I got via I think it's only various readers, or various readers only. I don't know which way around it goes. I just know it's from that selection of words. And so sorry. And I thought this was set in a snowy thing based on the cover, but apparently it's not. It's just set in the countryside. So that was kind of misleading with the front cover. But essentially, our main character, she's the daughter of an illusionist, and she's always been in the spotlight. Well, not really, not sort of like on the sidelines of the spotlight. And she's always had to be this certain way. And then she finds out that her parents are now separating and are now getting a divorce or something. This is by her mom literally randomly appearing in her house. And then her mom literally asks her to drive her to this old family place, where it actually turns out that she has family, because apparently, according to her mom, she didn't have family, but now it turns out she did. And they're all like witchy. I'm saying that in quotations because they don't actually use the word witch. And I will admit, this main character was kind of frustrating for me to like sort of have some form of emotion. Like the only part I kind of like said, okay, I actually understand this part, was the fact that this mom literally dragged her into this predicament. Like, I'd understand why I would be pretty pissed at my mom for that reason alone. And I'm going to admit, the only reason I kept reading this book was purely for the drama. Like, literally, I only read it for the drama. There were a few characters that I kind of like. There was two characters I always got confused with. There was one character that was pretty forgettable. And then the only actual character I really liked was actually this wolf that apparently one of the characters has like, some form of pet. that one was I liked that. So yeah, and then I read Spinning. This was a graphic memoir. And I read this because it had purple on the cover. This is actually a book I found at I think it was this. No, I didn't find it at the station library. I found it in a charity store. And I was looking for like some more graphic novels for me to read, because I don't own a lot of physical graphic novels. I have the Heartstopper series, but that's about it. I have more manga than I do graphic, but anyway. Apparently, if you had asked the author what this story was about, she would say it was ice skating. And it's not fully about ice skating. It's more of a coming of age, as well as out and I think it's like overcoming things that are like might be holding you back. So it is centered around this girl who like ice skating is pretty much has been her whole life, but she is slowly like starting to not love it as much. It just follows that sort of storyline, and as she comes of age and wants to continue on to more things. I'm not going to explain anything more other than that, because I think this is a book you kind of just need to go into. Not blindly, but just not knowing a lot. It was quite hard hitting. I didn't actually give this one a review on my Goodreads. Simply because I just felt like I wouldn't be able to put it into words how I felt after finishing this book. But yeah, I'm not going to say anything more than that, and we'll move on to the next book. What book are we on? Book 5. We're on the 5th book I read, and that was Hex and Vex. This was coming up. This was coming off Winterweed, which of course was witchy themed. So I wanted to read another witchy book, and I choose Hexed and Vexed. This is part of the Bailey Bay Cozy Mystery series. I read the first one last year. And I have to say, I actually enjoyed this one a bit more than I did the first book. Just because there was a little bit more witchy things going on. And also it was set in the world of the witches. So essentially, this girl turns up dead in the middle of the square, and they find her mother's magic signature on her. So her mother is blamed, and she is now going to be tried and possibly killed. But our main character, what the hell is her name? What's her name? Rosa. Her name's Rosa. But Rosa knows her mother didn't do it because her mother was with her when this murder took place. So she tries to basically find out who framed her mother, and while all this is going on, someone poisons her familiar. So she's also got to try and find a cure for her cat Shadow. So there's two mysteries going on. I did kind of figure out who was actually behind the murder. Well, murder and this other thing. Quite early on, shortly after something happens with Rosa, and it's related to her dad. Again, yeah. But I am glad that Cole and Matt actually did make a return in this, and we do see Matt actually coming into his magic, which is quite nice. And even though, again, I'm not really sure what the overarching storyline is, I do look forward to reading the third and final book of the series. I say read, I listen to it in audio, so we'll listen. I look forward to listening to that when we get there. And then, while I was also listening to this, I don't know why, but I must have been in a mystery sort of series, because I also decided to re-pick up Arts in the Blood. This I got from my Libby account, because I've got Libby, so I can connect to my libraries, and they had Arts in the Blood. Now, I did own a physical copy of this once. This was actually a book my nan had, and I thought I might enjoy it because it was Sherlock Holmes based. Even though I haven't read a lot of Sherlock, I haven't actually read that many Sherlock Holmes things, and I don't watch a lot of the adaptations. There are a few where I do like Sherlock Holmes, so I wanted to at least try it. I had trouble getting into it when I was reading it the first time. So I just decided to try on audio this time, because I didn't have the physical copy anymore. And there was at one point where I felt like I wanted to DNF the book again. Just because, not because there wasn't anything going on, there was quite a bit going on. Bearing in mind that I'm not good with mysteries as it is, the fact I was able to figure out who was behind the murder in Hex and Vex was actually quite amazing. But in this one, I was just struggling to follow along with what were all these little points. But I loved the whole madness with Sherlock Holmes. So that's what. Well, it's not really madness, but there was lots of stuff going on with Sherlock Holmes. But I liked that part, and then something happened that immediately just hooked me back in and just made me want to continue it. And I did. I gave Hex and Vex and 3 out of 5 stars again. But I also gave Art in the Blood 3 out of 5 stars. This, I liked it. It's okay. It's not, again, mystery isn't something that I'm overly fond of. It's not a genre I go into, but it's something I like to delve into on occasions, and these were the 2 that, for some reason, okay, I actually did enjoy parts of it, but they were but I was still it's not the greatest thing I've read. And apparently this was actually a streak, because the next book I read while I was finishing up Arts in the Blood was Elder Race. This one I got from my station library. And I think I picked it up because I had actually read one book by this author. And that was, I think it's The Wolf and the Tiger, or The Tiger and the Wolf. it again is that variation of titles with those words. And this was actually a series that I had wanted to read, but it's gotten to the point now where I'm going to have to reread that first book in order to actually remember anything, and also, you know, continue the series, because I think the next book is like The Bear and the Serpent. My library has them, so I'm more than happy to do so. And I've got the first book, so I can read that and then borrow the other two books whenever I need to. Don't know if I'll reread it this month coming, because I've got quite a few books that I want to specifically get into, but we shall see. So Elder Race essentially follows this girl. Oh god, what was her name? I should know what her name is, because I had to look it up. But essentially, this main character, who is the third daughter of her Mother Queen's succession, she is... Actually, no, she's the fourth daughter. She's not third. I think she's the fourth. So she's not considered that important. And she has been hearing all these reports about a demon essentially attacking sort of some of the areas, and her mother's not doing anything about it. So she goes to this wizard for help. But it actually turns out that this wizard is meant to be just an observer of her colonization, because they all originally came from Earth, like our Earth, but they relocated and essentially they colonized this, and then these guys are meant to have come back, and they're just meant to be observing them. But he has been alone for so long that he decides, let's just go. And it is a little, and we do see the miscommunication, because his translator, I think, is not working fully correctly, because the words he says is getting translated to something else. So he's saying, oh yeah, you got brought to this world in spaceships, but then she's saying, yes, that's exactly how it happened. She knows what he's talking about, but he doesn't, because this is sort of medieval, and he's talking about science. So I'm not going to explain what happens in the end of that. I also gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. And then, was that the end of my streak? Yes, it was. That was the end of my 3 out of 5 star streak. Because the next book I read was actually another library book, and this one was King of Wrath. I also was reading another book alongside this, because they were both due back on the 21st of January. I say due back, one was getting taken off, the other one was getting taken off Audible on the 21st of January, so I had to read it. But we'll talk about King of Wrath stuff. So this is book 1 in the King of Sing series. I know this author is quite popular for her Twisted series that I've never actually read, but if I enjoyed this series, I might pick up that series. And originally I actually thought the sins were actually going to be actual sins. But you know what? What we had, I actually still fully enjoyed, and I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one, and I really do want to pick up the rest of the series. Again, I'm going to be borrowing this because... But essentially, yeah. So, King of Wrath, really enjoyed that one. I was on 5 stars. The next book I was reading alongside this was The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. This is actually my first Morgan Matson Morgan Matson read. So essentially, again, like I said, this was being taken off Audible for free, so I only had a certain amount of time to read it. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. It definitely gave sort of that summer teen feel, and the whole scavenger hunt part I really enjoyed, and I actually did like that there was sort of a delve into the dad realising he had missed out quite a bit of his daughter's life, essentially, and there was a little bit miscommunication, because stuff that was happening with him meant that she couldn't go to her basically. So the next book I read alongside The King of Wrath was The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson. This is my first Morgan Matson book, and I know it was one of the old YouTubers I used to watch. I think it was read by Zoe. She was a great fan of this book, or of just Morgan Matson in general. This was one of the reasons why I had it on my Audible radar, because I hadn't read a Morgan Matson. So yeah, I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, which was quite good. It definitely had that sort of like YA sort of feeling to it, which was quite nice. And essentially we're following what's her name? Crap, I am really sorry. I forget names, so I'm just going to say if you've been watching this far, you will see little clips of what the names are. Either way, just because I cannot remember names to save my life. But essentially, our main character, she's meant to be going to this sort of program for the summer, but because there's something that goes on with her dad, because he's in politics, I don't know, he's in office, I'm going to say that, her spot gets basically removed and given to someone else. So she has no plans for the summer, so she actually starts dog walking spontaneously. And since she's also home for the summer, that means that she and her friends can do this whole scavenger hunt. Now, there are some other little things going on, especially with this friend group, that are spoilery, so I ain't going to delve too much into that. But what I did like about this was the fact we actually did get to see sort of our main character bond with her dad, which she hasn't actually done as much for like a long time. And I found that area of the story to be quite sweet. There is of course a romance, because it wouldn't be this type of book if it weren't. And I wish I could say that was the last book I read, but unfortunately the last book I attempted to read ended up being a DNF, and that was House of Salt and Sorrows. Now, it might have just been because I was listening to it on audiobook. I was borrowing this from my library. I basically was struggling to follow along with a few little bits in between and also get into the story, so I may try to read this one again. I'm just not sure when, and if I do, I may try and see if I can find like a physical copy of it, because I might find that be easier. Or even an ebook version of it, I'll be happy to read, because then I can read either one while I'm listening to the audiobook. That might be a solution to that, because it definitely seems right up my alley, because this is the 12 Dancing Princess retelling, and I haven't seen that many. And Triptych, yes, I've not actually read the original 12 Dancing Princesses book, if there is one. I remember watching the Barbie movie of that. Let's just say that. And no, I did not have the Barbie picturation when I was listening to this. I already knew it was going to be massively different. So yes, that was my final book for that. That was my final book for January. I wish it could have ended on a better note, but it didn't. But you know what? I'm not mad. Not mad at all.